Remember from the retreat here.
Did we do Mashav Aruch?
I don't think so. I don't recall that. You guys?
That was on here.
I don't remember doing that.
Okay. First, let me just welcome everybody back. We have few new faces for the new semester. Meretz Hashem. By the time we're done, the semester will be a very old face. And we are on the verge of completing Siman Daled Hey, and after we're done, we're going to begin a new book. We're finishing with this one. So if you didn't get your copy yet, look how beautiful it is. This is the Tzemach Tzedek's copy.
I don't have to press. What does it say?
No, this was printed in 2014. This one. So we're up to in the middle of Siman Daled, and the laws of the Tilas Yadayim in the morning. And before we get into, I'm going to review what we did last week and continue from where we left off. Before we do that, I want to give a quick review of how beautiful it is. This is the Tzemach Tzedek's copy.
I don't have to press. What does it say?
No, this was printed in 2014. This one. So we're up to in the middle of Siman Daled, and the laws of the Tilas Yadayim in the morning. And before we get into, I'm going to review what we did last week and continue from where we left off. Before we do that, I want to give a quick review of Mashav Aruch Merid Geshem laws. And okay, so it's as follows. Starting last night, we in Eretz Yisrael began saying the same Talamoto L'Bracha. Quick points, just as a review, so we have the basic information. Okay, so first off, Mashav Aruch Merid Geshem. All the world began changing to say, as we know, Shmini Atzeres. The halacha is, if you didn't say Mashav Aruch Merid Geshem, then we have here some discrimination. If you are Sephardi or a Chassid, Chabad, you get a special protection. You don't have to repeat Shemona Esrei. You're good. If you're Litvak, you got to do it again. Now, why do we have this discrimination? So it all has to do with what siddur you daven from, the nusach of your tefillah. It's nothing to do with you personally. It has to do with what's your nusach tefillah. In the nusach tefillah of Svardim and all Chassidim, we are accustomed in the summer months to recite Merid Atah. So if it happens in the winter, starting from Shmini Atzeres, so we forgot to say Mashav Aruch Merid Geshem, what did we say as our next default? Merid Atah. Mm-hmm. And the halach is as follows. Regarding Mashav Aruch Merid Geshem, so long as you mention something, you're good. Now, so by us, since we have in our siddur either Merid Atah for summer or Mashav Aruch Merid Geshem for winter, if we didn't say Merid Atah with Mashav Aruch Merid Geshem as we're supposed to, we at least were covered by the Merid Atah that we anyways for sure said, because we either say one or the other. There's never a time we don't say either. However, by the Ashkenazim who followed the old Nusach of Nusach Ashkenaz, they only say Mashav Aruch Merid Geshem in the winter, in the summer, they don't say anything. So if they forgot to say it, that means they didn't say anything. They didn't say anything, you weren't Yaitz Shemona Esrei. By then, you have to either go back, you have to go back to the English Shemona Esrei in all cases that you forgot it. That's the halacha. There's no other place to make it up. If they forgot it, you have to go back to the English Shemona Esrei. And what happens if they're in doubt if they said it? So for the first 30 days until Chaf Beis Cheshvan, you have to go back also. If you're in doubt, it's as if you didn't say it. So they have this special halacha relevant to them that we do not. Why is it that we're lenient here that if you said any praise, even Merid Atah, it's okay? I didn't mention rain. Tal is dew. Dew is not rain. The reason is like this. And this reason will also explain the reason why we separate the timing between Mashav Aruch Merid Geshem and B'Sein Talmud L'Bracha. Mashav Aruch Merid Geshem, its function is not a prayer. It's not a prayer for rain. It's simply a praise. We're praising God for blowing the winds and sending down the rain. We're just praising him for doing those things. We didn't ask him anything yet. We're just throwing up praise out there. We're warming him up for the request, like the child warming up his parent to ask him for money. He doesn't just break it. Dad, do you have $100 for me? First, he knows how to work the game. Or like many people who are very good, they know how to solicit money from philanthropists. That's what they do. They first say a whole bunch of shvachim for 2 weeks, and then they ask for the big check. So that's the way it works. So this is how we do it. We first send in praise, and since the idea is not a request but rather praise, so any praise you say that mentions water is valid. So therefore, by us, if we say Maratal, it's still valid. Okay. Now comes V'sein Talamat L'Bracha. This is the actual request for rain. Now is when we're actually asking God for rain, and here it becomes more severe. If a person does not say it, then he does not fulfill his obligation, Shemona Esrei. So in Eretz Yisrael, starting from last night, and in Chutz La'aretz starting from the 6th of December this year, if somebody forgot to say it, or they are even in doubt if they said it, then we assume for the first 30 days he didn't say it, and he has to repeat Shemona Esrei. So, okay, so that's if you remember it after you finish Shemona Esrei, oh, I forgot to say it, or I don't know if I said it. So now let's discuss what happens if you remember within Shemona Esrei. So there are a few stops, okay? So let's go through it. Our first stop, if you didn't say it in Baruch Aleinu, is where? Stop number 1, to make it up. You can say V'sein Talamat L'Bracha, is right after you finish Baruch Atah Hashem V'Barech Hashanim. Before you begin the next blessing, the Kabbalah Shofar, you can make it in right there, in between. Because the rule is, so long as you haven't yet begun the next blessing, you're still on the train of the previous blessing. So you can still sandwich it in there. If you didn't say it then you have another stop by in the middle of Shema Kilein. If you didn't say it then you have another stop by right after you finish Baruch Atah Hashem Shema Tefillah before Ritzei. You can sandwich in it over there as well. If you didn't say it there, then you got to go back to the original train station, which is Baruch Aleinu. Got to go back to Baruch Aleinu. If you forgot and you didn't go back and you continued, and you didn't remember that you skipped it until the end of Shemona Esrei, then you have to go back from the beginning of Shemona Esrei in order to say V'sein Talamat L'Bracha. That's the basic halacha of if a person forgot to ask for rain. Now,
what do you actually say when you catch it?
Go back? Oh, you start again from Baruch Aleinu. What are you saying?
Oh, you say the whole bracha.
If you're remembered in middle of Shemona Esrei?
Yeah.
So then you go back, if you missed all those stops that I mentioned, you go back to Baruch Aleinu and you just restart from there.
Right,
but during the stops.
During the stops.
Huh?
During the stops.
During the stops.
Oh, when you say during the stops, you just say V'sein Talamat L'Bracha. That's it. Those words, yeah. V'sein Talamat L'Bracha, and you should give dew and rain as a blessing. So those are the stops you can do it either in Baruch Aleinu or after Baruch Aleinu or after Shema Aleinu or within Shema Aleinu preferably, if you remember there. Okay, and why do we delay it until Zayin Mar Cheshvan? So the reason why we delayed until last night in Eretz Yisrael is because it says back in the times of the temple where pilgrims would come, they would be traveling back home until the 7th, and we didn't want them to get rained on, so we didn't want to ask for rain before they reached home. Now, what about Chutz La'aretz? Why do they start later? And why are they starting on a secular date? Usually, we have pride in our Hebrew calendar, and we don't refer to Jewish occurrences by secular dates. We refer to by Jewish dates. So why does everyone agree here that you should use the secular date when you want to refer to when to start asking for rain? So the explanation is as follows. A lot has to do with Bavel. In Bavel, the reason why we ask for rain is not some mystical thing. It also has mystical meaning, but in simplistic terms, it's in order so the crops will have rain and grow and be ready for harvest. So every country needs to pray for rain based on its harvest, based on its planting season and harvest season, to prepare for the harvest season. In Bavel, they would only start needing rain 60 days after the fall of fall, when autumn begins, 60 days later. That's when they would start needing rain. And that's why in Bavel it became set that 60 days past the Tekufa of Tishrei, which is autumn, that's when they start asking for rain, V'sein Talamat L'Bracha. And the rest of Chutz La'aretz, let me leave that now. Let's just discuss Bavel first. So the reason why the secular calendar is used and not the Hebrew calendar is because it has nothing to do with, it's not something based on a lunar calendar. It's based on the seasons. And we all know the seasons is based on the sun. The seasons are based on the orbit of the sun. They're not based at all on the moon. The seasons technically come they alternate. Every few years they come at a different time. That's why in the Muslim calendar, which they don't have a leap year like we do in our Hebrew calendar to make up the missing days between the solar and lunar, they have their holidays fall out every few years at a different season because there are 11-day discrepancy between the solar month and the lunar month, the solar year and the lunar year. So being that that's the case, we had to attach the praying for rain, which is 60 days from the start of the season of autumn, to the secular date. And since autumn always begins the 5th of October, therefore, 60 days later, the 5th of December, 5th, not October.
This year it's Thursday night,
Yes,
December 5th.
5th of December, correct.
20
5th of October, 5th of October to 5th of December, 60 days later, 2 months later.
The autumn start officially the 22nd of September.
So the halachic autumn, which is called Tkufas Tishrei,
Okay, it's 2 months.
begins the 5th of
2
December.
months.
That's when it begins. Sorry, the 5th of October, and 2 months later is the 5th of December.
Okay.
That's when it officially begins. So I didn't look into it further. You mentioned the 22nd. Okay, maybe it needs to be looked into why the discrepancy there. But that's what's brought down, that the Hebrew term Tkufas Tishrei, which is based on the solar months, is the solar year begins the 5th of October. So we have 60 days later that we need to start asking for rain. Now in a leap year, what happens this year is that we're doing on the 6th because, right, in a leap year we add an extra day to February, civil leap year. And the reason why we do it, we don't do it just for fun so people who are born on that day have a birthday once in a while, but we do it because in order to make up the discrepancy between the solar year and the 365 days that we are saying that the new year begins in. In other words, just like the moon, right, we have something very similar in our lunar calendar. In our lunar calendar, we created months of either 29 or 30 days. We have no such thing as a 29 and a half day month. It's either 29-day month or a 30-day month. But why do we have that? Because the moon doesn't orbit 29 full days or 30 full days. It orbits 29 and a half days. So every month, we're either losing half a day of the orbit, meaning we're either declaring Rosh Chodesh a half day early or a half day late. So in order to make that up, that's when we switch between 29 and 30 days. It's really the same thing with the solar year. The sun doesn't take exactly 365 days to go around. It's a little bit more. Anyone know how much more?
1 quarter.
1 quarter.
1 quarter.
A quarter, okay. So every what, 3-4 years? How often do we have every 4 years? Okay. Right, a quarter, that makes sense. A quarter times 12. Okay.
It all makes sense.
It all makes sense. Now it does. Thank you. You guys are teaching me. So it's math. Yeah, okay. So in order to make that up, so what happens is as follows. That means that whenever there is a civil leap year, that is a sign that the season is a day off. Meaning in the secular calendar, the season is really starting a day later, which pushes off the 60-day start to a day later as well. That's why this year everyone's going to begin the 6th of December. Now, the question is, I understand Bavel. They needed rain 60 days after the Kufas Tishrei. Okay.
Mexico.
What about the rest of the world?
Mexico.
America. What about the rest of the world? So we have a major debate here in the Rishonim. Some Rishonim say it's every country for themselves. Every country, you need to have the Minister of Agriculture declare when their rain season is, when their crops need rain, and that's when the Jews will start asking the Saint Talmud of Aruch and Shmones.
So in Brazil?
That's the opinion, right? So they'll start asking in the summer. That's the opinion of the Rush. The Rush holds every man for himself, or really every country for themselves. There's no global request for rain. It's every individual country, very nationalistic, the Rush, very into nationalities. So, however, other opinions argue in this and say no, everybody follows Bavel. The rest of the world follows Bavel. And in essence, it's because it's praying. The prayers of their Saint Talamater is not just going for their personal country, but also for Israel and also for Bavel. So this is a machlekes. Bottom line is that the custom, as we know it, is to ask for rain in Baruch Aleinu only after the 5th of December in all places. So they don't do it based on their personal.
Also?
Everybody. We don't do it based on our personal prayers, personal country's need. However, if a person living in these countries accidentally said the Saint Talamat Levracha in the time that the country needs rain, then we tell him the Rush says it's okay. So don't rush to repeat the Shemona Esrei. You don't have to repeat it because some say you say. In fact, they suggested in Paiskin, Al-Tibi writes this, that, for example, Australia, Brazil, they should say in summer the Saint Talamat Levracha in Shema Keleinu. Not in Baruch Aleinu, but in Shema Keleinu they should ask for rain. You see what happened now in Brazil. Brazil, half of the Amazon went on fire. It's as if they have rain. Not half, not literal, I exaggerated, but a lot. They showed satellite images. It was like half the earth was covered with smoke. So, rain can save California. We're talking about Brazil. Look
Yeah.
at California, poor California. If they would have rain, I'm assuming it would be over. So it's a very intelligent. So can they now ask for rain? Absolutely.
It's rainy season anyway.
In Baruch Aleinu, they should be praying for rain.
California is a rainy season now, not like in Brazil.
Why can they do it then? Instead
A country who's in need of rain is in need of rain outside of the period of 5th of December is allowed to ask for rain in Shema Aleinu. Not just you're allowed to, you're encouraged to. No, not in Baruch Aleinu. We rule that you don't say in Baruch Aleinu. Only in Shema Aleinu. Okay, that was our rain halachas, and we're going to get straight to our material. Okay, where are we up to? Let's read there. Let's see. Okay, last week we explained that there is a debate amongst the Paiskim regarding whether the laws of washing hands in the morning to get rid of the impurity when you wake up follows the same laws as washing hands for bread. Washing hands for bread has about 15 chapters, about 10 chapters in the Shulchan Aruch of different details, laws. The question is, are they all similar here as well or not? And we said, while there is a debate, the final ruling of the Alter Rebbe is that they are similar. So anything that invalidates washing hands for bread would also invalidate washing hands in the morning. That's the final way that we ruled. So based on that, we explained a few things. We said, last week we explained the order of washing, that you need to do 3 times consecutively, and why we do it that way. While in washing for bread we do less, we only wash 1 or 2 times. We also explained that the water has to reach the entire hand up until here, and that's where you got to be very careful of the blind spots. You have some blind spots over here. And if you don't twist your hand, sometimes the water won't hit them. That's no good. While by the washing for bread, there are opinions who say it's okay, even if you didn't hit the blind spot. By washing in the morning, when the tumah reaches here, it's a big problem. You have to wash the entire hand.
The actual pouring of the water in the morning before you start washing is the same way you wash for bread, 3 and 3 or whatever?
No, so that's what we explained last week, that you have to do it consecutively in the morning. That we explained some of the differences. We said all the invalidating laws of washing for bread also invalidate for the morning wash. You didn't follow those rules. But there are some stringencies in the morning washing that don't even apply to washing. One of them was, we said, that washing for bread, you don't have to alternate. You can just do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You could alternate if you want. There's nothing wrong. But there's no isser, but you can do whatever you want. But in the morning washing, you have to wash alternating, and you have to do 3 times. Washing for bread, you don't have to do 3 times. Many do 1 time, and many more do only 2 times. Only Chabad, as far as I know, does 3. You don't have to do 3. But in the morning washing, everyone agrees you have to do 3. You can't get rid of the tumah without 3 times, so that's a must. And you have to alternate in order to get rid of it. It's only gotten rid of if you alternate the pourings.
Chazaka?
What's that?
Chazaka?
If it has to do with chazaka, I don't know.
Has to do with it or what?
I don't know. It's Kabbalistic. It's something having to do with the klippus, of how the klipp, I guess. Maybe chazaka has something to do with it. Okay, 1 second. Where were we? Okay, so we explained, we began going through a few of some of the things that are conditions that need to be fulfilled, similar to washing hands in the morning, that you need to fulfill also when washing hands for bread. You need to fulfill also when washing hands in the morning, based on that we said before that they follow the same rules. So having the water poured as a result of human action, we explained that just like in the washing for bread, there's a rule that it has to come from human action. That's why it's not okay for you just to open up the faucet and then put your hands under, because that's not human action anymore. That's just flow of a stream that you caused to happen. So too, in the morning washing, it requires to have human action. So it doesn't help just to put your hands under a stream of water, and rather what we said you can do, just like washing for bread, what you can do is put your hands under the faucet and then turn it on and off 3 consecutive times, alternating. As that first splash is considered human action, yes. You also can't train a monkey to do Natilas Yadayim for you, not in the morning and not for bread. For davening, yes, because you don't need human action for davening, or after the bathroom. You don't need kayach adam, but for the morning washing and bread washing, it has to be a human. according to Darwin, though, his theory, I guess it would be, we have a backwards Darwin theory. We say that the gorillas were humans that were punished due to their idolatry to become gorillas, the Medrash.
Okay.
So we have a reverse evolution theory. Another halacha, just like in the morning washing, just like in the bread washing, it is forbidden to have a chatzitza on the hand, which means an interval. So too in the morning washing, you're not allowed to have any interval on the hands. The women must remove their rings from their fingers if they are usually accustomed to remove them for different things, just like they have to remove it for bread. The rule over there is that if you remove your rings for certain purposes, then it's considered a chatzitza. If you never ever take it off, it's not a chatzitza. But if you do, it's considered a chatzitza, and therefore it has to be removed likewise in the washing for the morning. How much water the vessel must hold. So just like we rule regarding washing for bread, so too it is here as well, that there has to be at least a revius of water in the vessel, which is not a lot, 86 milliliters. That's not a lot of water at all. And the more the merrier, of course. Now, how much do you have to pour in your hand at each time? How much water has to be poured in your hand at each time? So there really is no limitation. You don't have to have a revius. You can even have less, so long as it covers the entire hand. That's the main thing that we're looking for, that it covers your entire hand, not the amount that's being poured. Using kosher water, just like we have a law regarding washing for bread, that the water must be halachically kosher, and that doesn't mean with a hashkach. I'll explain what kosher means. So too, just like washing for bread, that's the law, so too washing in the morning, it retains that same halacha. So for example, if a person got his hand dirty at night, and the closest water next to him is the Nagelwasser cup. So he puts his hand, just goes like this with the water, cleans his fingers, and he's done. The next morning he wakes up, yawns, says Maidahani, is about to wash. Is the water kosher? The answer is no.
He put his hand in the water itself?
Last night.
In the kili itself.
Last night he put his hand in the water, washed off the dirt from his fingers. That is called, so we have to go back. Is this water valid for washing for bread? The answer is no. Any water that had malacha done to it becomes invalid for bread. And since we said the laws of washing for morning is similar to the laws of washing for bread, here too it becomes invalid. And therefore the halacha is, if a person did any malacha to make use of the water automatically becomes invalid. However, there is also a leniency here, and that is as follows. There is a way out of this problem. Instead of dipping your finger into the cup of water and, washing it off the dirt, you can scoop water with your hand and use the scooped water to wash your hands, and that allows the rest of the water to remain kosher. People have a common misconception. Most people will answer you that if you touch the Nagelwasser water, you have to throw it out. It's gone. This is only correct after you woke up. After a person wakes up, since his hands are tummy, if you accidentally touch the water, then the whole water becomes tummy and it's gone. You have to get rid of it. You need new water. However, if at night, before you went to sleep, you don't have any tum on your hands, you accidentally touch the water, you've done nothing. The water is completely fine. Don't throw out that water. You did nothing wrong. It says the lower waters cried to come up to God. Why throw him out? He's in your cup. He was the one designated for the morning washing. He did nothing wrong. An accidental touch is not a malacha. Even if it's not an accidental touch, you scooped up some water to wash your hand. You didn't go like this in it. You didn't do a malach to the water itself. The water remains kosher.
The night water that you set up to do your hands in the morning, you're saying you can scoop up. That's what you're saying?
Right.
I didn't correct. At night before you go to sleep.
Why would you do that instead of just finding another source for water?
Well, if a person's lazy, tired, he doesn't want to get out of bed. It's dark, he's scared. I don't know, you can't think of a reason?
That's after you've already gone to, if it's like 10 o'clock at night, you haven't gone to sleep yet, but you have that water.
If you already fell asleep and you have the tum in your hands, and you can't, then of course you can't touch the water. Correct.
Can I go back for a second? What kind of tumah are we talking about? Washing the hands in the morning after you've already washed the Nagelwasser.
Well, we're talking before you wash Nagelwasser.
Uh-huh.
We're talking about when you first woke up in bed. That tumah, when you first wake up in bed, before you wash.
Before you wash for brushes.
Yeah. before you wash next to your bed. That you have tumas bas melech, the very severe tumah. And if your hand even accidentally touches, so you have to be careful if you have two water cups in one basin, you have to be careful not to touch the other one accidentally. Otherwise, it's matame the water, you need to get new water. Another halacha that applies similar to washing for bread, and that is one has to be careful that his hands do not touch the water that is on the other hand. It's explained in Hilchos Netilas Yadayim regarding washing for bread as well as washing in the morning, the following. That the reason why, let me explain by bread. The reason why we wash twice by bread, we wash 3 times, whatever, twice, 3 times that we wash by bread, is for the following reason. The first washing, the first pouring, removes the impurity from the hand and gets it onto the water. The second pouring washes away the impure water, and now we have clean. Now we're clean. So what happens is as follows. There's a rule. A pouring of water can only wash away an impurity of that own hand. It cannot wash away another hand's impurity. So if, for example, if I washed my hands 1 time, and then you stuck out your hand to give me shalom aleichem, and I feel really bad, so I stick out my hand and we shake. So I now have your impurity of your hand on my hand, because you didn't wash yet. And because of that, now this hand has water that's impure due to my own tumah and due to someone else's tumah. It no longer helps me to pour second time. I have to dry my hand first. Furthermore, even if I already washed 3 times on this hand and this happened, my hand was still wet, it's still a problem. It's still a problem, and therefore you would need to dry your hand and wash again. Furthermore, even if it's not somebody else's hand, it's your own hand. It can only get rid of the tumah of the right hand for the right hand, the left hand for the left hand. So if there is touching going on, this makes the tumah from this hand go onto this hand and this hand, and it basically invalidates the washing. So therefore, when a person washes both for bread and in the morning, you have to be very careful that there's no trading of waters here. Now, how do you make in the morning? In washing bread is quite simple because you do 1, 2, 3. This is dry, and then pick it up 1, 2, 3. There's really no contact involved, so it's not really an issue. How would tummy water ever get from one hand to another unless you actually let me touch? But otherwise, it should be clear. Okay. The problem really is, especially if you have 2 handles, right? You're holding it here, 1, 2, 3. You then take this from the other handle. It's not even near this end. 1, 2, 3. You're done. Problem is in the morning. In the morning, you're alternating between each one. Doing a lot more movements. So in the morning, it's very possible that your hands will accidentally meet each other, touch each other, while they haven't yet been washed 3 times. In that case, you've traded impurities, and now they have to be dried again. And that is precisely the reason of why we use a towel. That is why we use a towel, and especially we should use it in the morning washing in order to prevent this trade of impurity from happening.
So legal vessel with a towel.
What's that?
With a legal vessel with a
towel. Yes, that is the reason why we do it that way. Yes. Okay, I think that covers it till that halacha. We're going to go back inside the Shulchan Aruch.
Quick question. If people wash hands, it's supposed to be 3 times. It's supposed to be like the bread, or there's no halacha.
So Birchas Kohanim, the washing is as far as I know, it's meant to be like davening. It's like a davening washing. Now you have some people who wash like they wash in the morning because they actually save their morning washing for Birchas Kohanim. I know a Cohen family of Cohen rabbis, rabbanim of cities, that they have a very old tradition that they don't wash. No, I'll tell you what they do. They do the following. They wash in the morning after their bed, of course, and then they don't wash again until right before Baruch Shamar. They wait to Baruch Shamar, then they go wash with a bracha, and that counts for the Netilas Yadayim and also for the Kohen. And the reason is because they want to be able to have the bracha also count for the Birchas Kohen washing. But bottom line, that's not what's generally accepted. What's generally accepted is that you just you can wash either like you do in the morning, or you can wash like after a bathroom, which is like in the morning, or like for bed. There is no rule. No, you can do whatever you want. There is no requirement. Again, the alternative washing is a very specific requirement, only for the morning washing, only for that tumah, for that form of tumah that we have. That's why it is required. Okay, we're reading inside halacha tes. Halacha ches. Siman dal ches. Antilas yadayim shachris and until gabe kaka ela l'seich kli. And the Rabbi here is discussing where can we pour the water into. Let me just find this over here. Yeah. Where is one to pour the washing water into? So he writes that the washing water is not allowed to be poured onto the ground. You're not allowed to pour the washing water when you're washing in the morning onto the ground. It has to be poured into a vessel. Let's not forget today, nobody would want to pour it onto the floor anyways. But back then they had earth floors, so it wouldn't hurt to pour it onto the floor. And kind of be rules that no, it has to be poured into a vessel. What is the reason? The reason is as follows. This water, we're going to learn, is very impure and it needs to be discarded. It's dangerous. It's dangerous for it to be around, and therefore we need to discard it in a way that nobody will come near it, that nobody will step on it, that nobody will come into contact with it. And that is why part of the Negel Wasser setup is that a person must have a kli. So even if you're camping and you have no problem washing on the ground, you shouldn't. You should always have a kli, a base. It's not just there to protect your tiled floor from getting wet. It's also there in order to fulfill this halacha that we're mentioning over here. Now, what type of vessel should one use? So the Alter Rebbe here writes the following. Usually, as Yidden, we like to beautify our mitzvahs. So let's get a nice, and especially if you're a business and you can sell things, why not make some parnasa? So we're going to design and create the most beautiful silver plated, for those who can't afford actual silver, for those who can't afford Nagelwasser bucket to receive the Nagelwasser water. So Alter Rebbe says no. It's proper that the lower basin used be a disgusting vessel. It's meant to be disgusting. And the Seder Hayayim, who is a Tzfat resident, writes that the water-filled vessel is blessed while the empty vessel is cursed. And it's a very good practice, therefore, to use an empty vessel that is broken and disgusting, because in essence, we're like feeding the klippas. We don't want to feed the klippas. We don't want to feed the dogs the bone on a gold platter. So we'll throw it to him so it's actually, you're supposed to use a cheap vessel for that purpose. That's why also amongst Chassidim, we are particular not to use those special mayim achreinim vessels, because we don't want to beautify the mayim achreinim, which is a similar idea. It's giving the klippas their share. Question. The Nagelwasser bucket is a very useful bucket. It's the largest in my house, and I would like to wash clothing in it. Can I do so? The answer is...
If you rinse it well?
The answer is that there is no prohibition in doing so. The vessel does not become asur nana. If it's rinsed, if it's clean from the Nagelwasser water, then the vessel itself does not become prohibited, doesn't become tameh. You're allowed to use it. But what about using it for food? Can you use it for food? And the answer is that some poskim rule that after one washes it out, it can be used as you just kashered it in essence. You've cleaned it, you've kashered it, there's nothing left in it. However, other poskim completely negate this, and in fact, we find in the Sefer Amudei Kesef, who was authored by the same author as Mizgaras Shulchan, which was a famous Chassidish posek in the 19th century, that he writes the following: majority of the illnesses come as a result of pouring the mayim achreinim water or morning washing water into a vessel and then using that vessel for food, even if one washes in between. It does not suffice. These are his words. He says that there's a tremendous tumah in the vessel, and therefore we should never use it for food. So I was once asked the following question. There was a group of people who were staying at a place where they didn't have what to pour the water into other than a cooking pot. So they asked me, can we use the cooking pot? So how do we answer them? So what I told them to do was, so according to the first opinion, it's much to just wash the pot afterwards. But we have the second opinion here. So what I told them to do was like this. Take a plastic bag, line the pot with a plastic bag, and wash into the plastic bag. And then throw it out. So the water is not going to touch the pot, and that way everybody could be happy.
Mm-hmm. That's easy with the plastic bags.
Yeah. Okay. Halacha, that was halacha. Ches, halacha tes. Mayim shel netilas yadayim shachris asal l'hanas mem leish b'chem abayis lo kashavim shem neyodam. It says in continuation, the previous law that we said you can't pour it onto the ground. The water of netilas yadayim of the morning, it's forbidden to get benefit from it. You cannot drink it. You cannot use it to water your plants. I was asked this the other day. Someone asked me, they said, we were very careful about water in Israel. Can we pour out our Negelwasser water in our plants? So I'm like, well, Negelwasser water bread, you could, but Negelwasser for the morning says, yeah, in the morning we have the whole family. It's a lot of water. We want to save it. Absolutely not. I said, do you like your plants? He said, yes, I like my plants. And don't pour it on your plants. There's plants you don't like. That's a different story. It says, it's also to get benefit from it. So obviously you can't use it to water your plants. And a person's not allowed to spill in his house and not in any area that people walk by. That is the reason that for this prohibition. So it's explained. Rabbi explains like this. Let's see. The Rebbe concludes this is the reason. As a person may come into contact with this water and get injured. That's what he writes. In Aruch Tzedek, which is a Kabbalah Sefer, was a student. The reason he writes that one can get injured through leaving the water in the home. The water itself is a danger, and therefore we have to put it away in an area that human contact, there will not be human contact with it. Bottom line is that based on this halacha, one should make sure to spill the water down the sink or the toilet, and he should try to do it right away. The sooner the better. The more it stays around, first of all, the more of a chance it has to spill. And number two, just the fact that it stays around already is a spiritual danger, as is brought down.
Not in the kitchen sink.
Never an area where you have food staying, correct, or food vessels staying, correct. However, the second washing, you can wash in the kitchen sink because you've already gotten rid of the tumah. So let's say I washed next to my bed, went to the bathroom, that you can wash wherever you want. So too, of course, washing for bed, you can do whatever you want. But the washing of mayim achronim and of this morning washing for the first time, that water should never be spilled into vessels in order to avoid this spiritual danger.
Or in the toilet, should you flush the toilet?
You don't have to, because the toilet usually has a revius of water which nullifies the water. If you pour a revius of water into the Negelwasser water, it nullifies it. So, but you could. I mean, it doesn't hurt to flush it. If it happened that somebody didn't know, somebody spilled his Negelwasser water on inside the sink, what do? So you just have to you have to clean your vessel, clean your dishes, basically. That's it. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to put it, you don't have to burn it, do hagala or libun chamer. You just wash it well, use soap, wash it, and you're good to go. Now here's an interesting halacha recorded in the Bach in the name of the Zayar. If your next door neighbor knocks on your door, let's say you're living in Yehupitzville, and somewhere in Kansas, you have your nice guy, hillbilly knocks on your door and says, do you mind, please, giving me that Jewish morning washing water? Saying before we poured or after? Because no, after you're done pouring. So it says, don't give it to him. The Goyim use this water to perform kishuf, sorcery. Yeah. The Bach in the name of the Zayar. It says it's forbidden to give it to someone who requests it, as they are certainly asking for it in order to perform sorcery with the water, and therefore keep it away. May one give it to animals to drink? Absolutely not. We said before, you're not allowed to benefit from it. However, the Rambam writes in Hilchos Reitzeach, you are allowed to give it to dangerous animals. So you can have dangerous animals drink this. Watering plants we mentioned is usher. Now, what do you do if it's spilled on your floor? So obviously clean it. Having water on your floor is a very big danger for slipping. That's even with pure water. It doesn't matter what type of water it is. But the way, the easiest and fastest way of dealing with it is by pouring a revius into it. Then that nullifies the whole thing, and then you can go clean it up. That's the case if you're not able to clean it up right away at that moment. In my home, we have no choice but to throw out the Nagelwasser water immediately because I have a little 1.5-year-old who walks into everybody's room and loves spilling the water on the floor after they're done washing. So we know we have to all spill it out on time right away. So that pressures us to do that. Otherwise, we'll have a big mess on our shoulders. Okay. Back inside. Sif. So here the Mechaber now begins going into the order of the washing itself. And he says that the order should be as follows. A person should pick up the vessel with his right hand, pass it to his left hand, and then pour it onto his right hand. The reason we do it in this kind of backwards way, instead of saving time spent with our left hand, is in order so chesed, the right hand, gives over to glura, and then the glura pours. We never want to give from glura, we always want to give to glura. So that's the reason behind this halacha. Sif. Yud Aleph, lo yitol v'mishleinoto yadav shachrios. Can I have somebody pour the water on my hands instead of me doing it? If someone is injured, sometimes this becomes necessary. They can't do it themselves. So the answer is absolutely. Someone else is allowed to pour the water on your hands. There's no obligation for you to be the one. We require human action, but it doesn't have to be you, just any human being. Even a Gentile, by the way, is kosher for that. But lichatchila, it should be poured specifically by a person who has already washed hands, and also specifically by a person who is chayev in washing hands. So the chilul should not be poured by a guy, and should not be poured by a child, and even by a woman. Let's say a person's wife. It says if she's a nida, it should not be poured by her initially. So. But another person, it's not a problem so long as he has already washed his hands. So if you'd base, im shichshech yadav l'seich kli shel mayim also le'natila l'kriyah shmo tefila avalei l'ruach rasha alein im shich yadav v'gilul meimus v'chalaf nistap masala v'ruach rasha. So here the question is like this: for whatever reason, this person has a cup of water, and instead of pouring the cup of water on his hand, he wants to dip his hand into the water. Does that work for natilas yadayim? In other words, do you have to specifically pour, or does dipping also? Correct. Or is dipping also valid? If somebody just they'll do a few dips instead of pouring. Does that work? So the answer is here. We just read it. Chaber says, for washing, for prayer, for davening, you don't need to have a pouring. We mentioned this already in the past. You don't need to pour. As long as, even if you just open up the faucet, have a little bit of water, it's valid min adin for kriyashma tefillah. However, to get rid of the ruach ra that we're talking about when you wake up, it's no good. Dipping hands does not suffice. And this applies even if you dipped it in 3 water, meaning you dipped it 3 times, and even if you dipped it in 3 different vessels. I have 1, 2, 3 vessels with water, and I dipped it 1, 2, 3. It's still no good. He says here it's questionable, but practically because it's questionable, we rule it's no good. And a person needs to wash properly by pouring onto it. Now, there is one type of dipping that is good. This type of dipping is no good. This is the type of dipping that is good. And this is also, by the way, by washing hands for bread. And that is as follows. So a river. And this actually once happened to us, we were camping somewhere here in Israel. This is like 20 years ago. And we didn't have Nagelwasser water. We didn't have anything to hold a Nagelwasser water. We didn't have any cups. So we all had to go to the river in order to do Nagelwasser. And we had to, so we allowed to dip our hands in the river for the sake of washing hands in the morning. And the same as regarding washing for bread, it's the same question. Does dipping the hands in the river suffice? What's the answer, guys?
Without a kapata, that would be the same as.
Well, if I have a cup, I can just pick up the river and wash.
Right.
So that's not
straight into the river.
Right.
There is nothing else.
Running, it seems like it has a.
So the Alter Rebbe rules like this.
No,
Alter Rebbe rules: dipping one's hands 3 times into a river is questionable whether it removes the impurity. Thus, one is to rewash his hands properly, pouring 3 times from a vessel. In other words, this idea that that dipping that we just read inside the Mechaber is questionable if it works, possibly doesn't work. is by all dippings, even in a river, even in a kosher mikvah. It's possible it doesn't work. But nonetheless, interestingly, the following is the final ruling regarding this subject. It's like this. We have two types of rivers. We have rivers that are kosher for mikvah and rivers that are pasul for mikvah. So let's explain. We have rivers that run throughout the whole year. Those rivers are natural well springs, as how else do they have a reservoir of water if it's not raining? So it's coming from the ground. That's called a mayon in halacha. So river that has status of a mayon is a kosher mikvah and has all the leniencies of a mikvah, of a mayon, and therefore a person's allowed to immerse in it, even if it doesn't have 40 saw. In that area, it's kosher, and it's allowed to be a stream, zeichlin, it's allowed to be running water, it's kosher, because it's a mayon. However, a river that during the summer becomes dried up, and we have many of those here in the north, if you take a look, just the one right over here by Park Einat Chelet.
Yeah.
In the winter, they had a nice, beautiful stream. Now it's finished. It's gone. It's actually what's called in Hebrew in Lashon HaKodesh is Nachal Kozev. Nachal Kozev. It's a scam river. It's a river that one day yes, one day no. They make believe they're a river, and then suddenly in the summer they disappear. Nachal Kozev. It's a big fat lie. It's fake news. So those rivers are pasul. They're not only pasul when they're dry, of course, because there's nothing there, there's no water, but they're pasul even when they run. Why? Because they are not coming from the ground, they are coming from upstairs, meaning rainwater. And running rainwater is a pasul mikvah. That's why one of the most important things in a mikvah that they do when they build a mikvah, mainly for women, for men it's not that. It's not the same importance, obviously, until Mashiach comes. But for women, it's an absolute biblical obligation to immerse in a kosher mikvah when necessary. So one of the things that they're so careful about is building it hermetically sealed in a way that there will be no stream of water that will flow from it. For example, if a mikvah has a crack, that can invalidate the whole mikvah because the crack can allow water to seep through and now creates it zeichlin. That's why also most women mikvahs don't have filters, because filters create a shiloh of being zeichlin. And so on and so forth. They're not allowed to flow. It has to be sitting water. It's called mayim ashburim. Sitting waters, calm waters. The only way it's valid if it's streaming, if it's a mayan, if it's a wellspring. So a river, going back to our point. So a river that goes the entire year, that is clearly coming from the depths of the earth, and it is kosher for washing hands for bread. Again, kosher for washing hands for bread, and therefore you can wash your hands there, you can dip, and you each say a bracha of al shtifas yadayim. That's the bracha you say.
I have a question. Even let's say in spring, this river is running the whole Europe, and in the summer it's very low, for instance. And in the spring, because of the snow, then it becomes very high. And
right.
Full of water.
Very good question.
Majority of
Great
water.
question. We readily see, and I see this by the mayan that I immerse in every day under my house. So in the winter, the flow is a lot stronger. The stream is the current is a lot in the winter during the rain season. And you can say that for sure there's like 80% rainwater and 20% mayan water. So maybe we should now revert it in the winter to a running rainwater stream and therefore be invalid. So the Gemara deals with your question. Likewise, the Shulchan in chapter 201 in Hilchos Mikvahs, and it answers the following tradition: that for every drop of water that falls from heaven, 2 drops go up from the earth. You heard that?
2 drops.
For every 1 drop that comes from heaven, 2 drops come from the earth. So the Mayan is sending 200% more than it usually
So you multiply by 200%.
It's a 1 to 3 ratio, the rainwater. Not to mention what was already there, so it's less than 1.
So you have to make the calculation each time.
No, so it's mutter. It says it's a guarantee. It's always 2 to 1. It's a guaranteed win of the mayan water. So you don't have to worry about that. Bottom line is that a river that is a kosher mikvah you can, kosher for mikveh, you can dip your hands even with a blessing also in the morning. Okay, but if it's not kosher for mikveh, if it's, as we said, it's only a rain season river, then you can dip your hands in it, but it's questionable for removes impurity, and therefore you cannot say a bracha. Now, what about a kosher mikveh, like a real kosher mikveh, like the actual ocean itself? Let's say the Kinneret. The answer is everyone agrees that the Kinneret, a sea, an ocean, is a kosher place for immersion. 100%. That's a Ma'ayan, that is a wellspring, and therefore it is valid. So you're allowed to dip your hands in it and say the bracha on Yisodayim. Really, for bread, it's al shtif Yisodayim, so al Yisodayim in the morning. However, the Alter Rebbe concludes, if you later access a vessel, then you should use a pour again from the vessel. In other words, it's something very interesting. It ends up, according to this, it could be a person actually toiveled in the mikveh. It still possibly doesn't remove the impurity. It could be you actually need a vessel to do the pouring, and only that actually removes it. So therefore, he says that even though the main opinion is that it does remove it, and therefore you can even say a blessing on this dipping in a kosher mikveh or the ocean, the best is if you do find a vessel afterwards, to simply use a vessel. Now let's talk about snow. No, say the bracha the first time by the dipping in the ocean.
And how is that hand dipping done specifically?
So 3 times you would dip. Yes, 3 times. That's what I wrote over here.
So
now this is different than bread washing. By bread washing, everyone agrees you'll need to dip once. By bread washing in the ocean in a kosher mikveh, you just dip once like this, and you're good.
And the other one's just all trained just like you would, just pretend like it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Traditional.
Okay, now let's talk about snow. We'll conclude about snow. This is a fun one. Does it help? Hopefully, we'll get this year. Huh? What's the forecast? We're going to get snow this year here. Nobody knows. Okay. They say global warming. We'll see what happens. Chicago got the worst. Oh, it just means extreme.
Chicago got snow already?
No, I'm saying last year they got quite a storm. Okay, so regarding dipping in snow, and I remember one time when we were living in Beitar during I think it was 4 years ago. There was a big snowstorm, and for whatever reason that caused a problem with the water. And sometimes what happens is the water freezes and the pipes break. So basically, like our entire city didn't have water for almost a whole day. People were stuck. There was literally no water. People were stuck. So everyone was asking. I was getting a whole bunch of phone calls. How do we wash for bread? Can I dip my hands in? And it was Friday, so people going into Shabbos without water to wash with. So the answer that I told most people was to take the take snow, put it in pots and melt it. Put it on your fire and create water out of it. But let's see, is it mutter not? Do you have to do that, or can you just dip your hands inside? So the answer is like this. Inside the snow, yes. So bottom line is that the Alter Rebbe rule, this is a machlekes. It's a machlekes in place if dipping your hand in snow suffice. It's like a great way of washing. It's a way to wash without getting your hands wet. And but nonetheless, the bottom line way that we rule is that you cannot say a bracha over it. So you can dip your hands in snow if you have nothing else. It's better than nothing. But you cannot say a bracha because of the machlekes. However, if you crush the snow and then melt it, then according to everybody, it is valid.
But you don't crush the snow with your hands.
Actually, you
It
could.
would be a problem.
Why?
Because your
Only
hands
in the
are-
morning. In
your
the
hands
morning
are
washing.
funny.
Yes, in the morning washing. But in the non-morning washing, even that if it's for bread, that would be okay.
You
For bread will be okay?
Yeah.
bring the snow into your house, you melt it down, and you just take a vessel, you take a kvacher and dip the water
Yeah.
in there like that.
Before Shabbos.
Yeah, obviously. So that's what we did. That's what we personally did in my family. We melted the snow. We had a whole bunch of snow that was melted. People were saying, "Oh, that's so disgusting to wash your hands with snow." People, they get so finicky. They don't understand snow is one of the cleanest things on earth that God sent us. You know, if anyone ever took a little dive into his pipes, they would never drink water again. They went inside those pipes.
Shkaya.
Okay,